Last night was our first grief talk for the holidays, and I had a gentleman that was there, and at the very end came up and introduced himself and found out that he was one of the other men that had tried to save Frank's life, one of the first responders.
Yikes.
The unfortunate
Sorry, guys,
thing
hold on.
is that he was at my grief talk because he has now suffered his own loss. I was filled with so much honor and gratitude that I could be there for him and his family to provide some sort of hope and peace.
Okay, that wasn't supposed to happen. Hold on a second.
I'm still mute.
My name is John James, and I started the Grief Recovery Institute over 30 years ago as a result of the death of a son in 1977. I, like many other people that I've met over the years, had made the assumption that because loss was such a common occurrence, that there would be people who were trained to know how to help. And sadly, what I discovered is that most of the help that people offered was intellectual in nature, and my brain wasn't really broken, it was my heart. So over a period of about 8 months, I discovered a process that helped me to feel better.
When John James created the phrase grief recovery back in the late 70s, almost no one had ever heard the words grief and recovery in the same sentence. And people would say to us, is recovery even possible? To this day, some people still contest it. But we discuss it with them, we argue it with them, and we show them from our own personal experience, from our own losses, how we have recovered and regained a sense of well-being in our life in spite of the losses that have happened.
The concept that we were operating with at the time was, how do you deliver grief recovery assistance to the largest number of people in this period of time? Consequently, the first obvious thing was writing a book. The first book was the Grief Recovery Handbook, which is now in its 4th edition, the 20th anniversary edition, that has been translated into multiple languages. Our book, When Children Grieve, also has been translated into multiple languages. And the third, Moving On, deals with the enormous sadness that revolves around divorce and romantic relationships that don't survive even to the point of a marriage. But even with a book, you're only going to reach a certain number of people. And so we then decided that we would create these grief recovery outreach programs, which are moderated recovery groups where people take very specific actions to heal their heart.
The really neat part is we give a practical, applicable set of actions people can take rather than sitting and waiting to feel better, which most people do because that's what they were taught. So the key here is actions to feel better or different than we felt and not be paralyzed into inaction, which keeps us stuck forever.
We began to train people, individuals, who would then return to their local community and moderate these grief recovery outreach programs. We started out with 4, and now I don't know the number. We have thousands of them.
One of the reasons I'm sitting here talking today is so that we can make ourselves available to people when the need is. Otherwise, they go, I needed you 20 years ago when my daughter died. Where were you? We don't want anyone to have to say that ever again.
Every loss is as the result of the end of an emotional relationship, and every relationship is unique. So everyone grieves at 100% whatever the loss is, and one loss has nothing whatsoever to do with the other.
Part of grief recovery is to unlearn some of the stuff we all learned. So, and whether we learned it professionally or at the feet of our parents, doesn't matter. We have to unlearn some myths about grief so we can learn the method that will help us complete unfinished business.
It is up to the griever when they decide that they are willing and able to come in to do the grief recovery method. It is not up to us to tell them when they have to do that. One of the most heartbreaking things is that we hear from grievers is they call and say, well, I was told that I'm not supposed to come into a group or do any work for a year, which is kind of crazy.
It is never too soon to start to heal your heart. I would say that within 15 minutes following a loss of any kind, the griever's mind is already starting to identify the things that they wish they had done differently or better. I cannot imagine, nor have I seen in 34 years, any benefit accrue to anyone as a result of waiting.
We have a different perspective, and the perspective is two things. It's an absolute respect of unique individual human relationships and a recognition of a method of recovery that is available to anyone who's willing to do it.
I don't care where they live. I don't care what their economic status is. I don't care what their religious beliefs are. When you experience a loss, your heart hurts. And we would love to help all the people who are having that kind of an experience.
broken down and tired. And I do it 1,000 times again. You.
My name is John J.
Evaluate. Do you you don't need, I mean, you don't need to be like 100% of all of it.
Good evening.
No, the indicators are the definer of whether you get a 2, 3, or 4, or 5.
Ladies, can you hear me?
The more, and I was the more.
Yes, we can.
Okay,
you have
wonderful.
each of the indicators,
Uh,
you can't dispute it. 'Cause that's how they're defining what good looks like. Now, it's your job to say, it's not only do I do this, but the reason why I'm a 4 is I do these other things. And the reason why I'm not a 2 is because I do this. So because I do this, I'm not a 2. I fulfilled these indicators. But not only have I fulfilled it, let me tell you how I've gone over beyond. As a matter of fact, I can.
We are getting some background noise. And before we start, welcome everybody very much for being patient as we get everything set up. May I just ask all the participants who are in the room, if you could please mute yourselves again? Much appreciation. Thank you so much. Well, welcome. Welcome to our part 2 series of we are basically here to just dialogue and share some ideas, questions that would be and how distance and teleworking can actually bring upon grief. My name is Michelle Sassamoto. If you joined us last week, I was one of the grief recovery specialists who was on the panel. Tonight with me, I have 2 speakers. They will get to introduce themselves, Marcela Takai and also Raylene Elicto. And then we have some behind the scenes individuals, grief recovery specialists as well, Darlene Garcia and Bobby Titano, who are on the chat at the moment, and also Guadalupe Camacho, who is in Saipan. So we are so excited to come onto this room again and be able to share some of our experiences and our knowledge with everyone. And I'm just wondering how everybody's week had gone or is going. It's Wednesday, and we're having a difficult time trying to remember what day it is, but today is definitely Wednesday, and it's our second part. So what I'd like to do now is just go through a little of our housekeeping and disclaimers before we actually move into the grief talk. So like I mentioned, my name is Michelle Sassamoto. I just would like to ask everyone, once again, if you could kindly put your speakers on mute and use the chat to communicate. We do have our team. You will see them on the chat as Giving Grief a Voice, and they will be able to help you out if there's any needs. If you have any immediate questions that need to be answered, we can hopefully get some resolved at that time. The other thing is, please reserve your questions until the end. We will have a question and answer session, okay? And we are hoping that we are not going to go over 90 minutes. We have the room for 90 minutes. We don't want to take too much of your Wednesday. So without further ado, let me go ahead and start with the disclaimer and transparency. So we are not counselors, therapists, or licensed clinicians. We are certified grief recovery specialists, trained and certified by the Grief Recovery Institute. And also we are on Facebook Live right now, Giving Grief a Voice, Facebook Live. So this is being aired as we're on the Zoom. It's also being streamed live. So thank you again for that. So how does teleworking and social or distance learning, what is that and how is that in relation to grief? So for those of you who joined us last week, maybe you remembered what the meaning of grief that was offered by the Grief Recovery Institute. There were 2 different meanings that we had shared, and I'm going to share that again tonight. So first of all, grief is the normal and natural reaction to a loss of any kind, okay? And the other one is grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or change of pattern in behaviors or patterns. So let me say that once again. Grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end of change in a familiar pattern or behavior. So when you think about distance learning and you think about teleworking, there's a whole lot of change in patterns and behaviors that are taking place with that. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Just to give you a little bit background about myself, my name is Michelle Sassamoto. Aside from being a grief recovery specialist, I also work for the Guam Behavioral Health. Tonight, I am here wearing the hat of a grief recovery specialist, but I also manage and run some prevention programs on the other side of the house, which is the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, and bar none, I am a human being, okay? And that sounds really silly, but we're gonna see how that all works tonight. And what led me to grief recovery was 8 years ago, I had lost my husband suddenly. He passed away in 2012. And when I thought that I was working through all of my issues as it may be called, but which is really grief, I really wasn't working through it. And I found that I was doing a lot of things that was just pretty much like what I've learned my whole life, being strong and grieving alone. And so when I had met Darlene Garcia, who first went out to get certified with the Grief Recovery Institute and came back a whole different person. She had just lost her husband as well. And I thought to myself, what if I can go out and also learn about this method, learn about the grief recovery method, to see if it could also just enhance some of my skills to be able to be a better helper to other people. When I had attended that in 2016, my certification training, little did I know that I was actually going to be going to a 4-day training that I thought was going to enhance my skills, but ended up being a training that I was working on myself. And I was so floored by some of the things that I learned. Honestly, I worked on a lot of the pain that I was experiencing that I felt when my husband passed away, and hence why I'm here today. And the greatest thing about this is all of the things that I have learned in the grief recovery method has led me to this place where now I'm able to use the same tools that I've acquired in 2016 throughout all the different losses that I've experienced. Most importantly, the losses that I'm experiencing in this global crisis, in this pandemic. So I would like to go ahead and just go around with the two presenters. And if I can ask Raylene to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then Marcella will be up next.
How's the day? Can you all hear me good?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, Michelle, for that intro. My name is Raylene Alicto, and I am one of the Island Certified Grief Recovery Specialists. I have been certified since 2018. And, briefly speaking, what brought me to grief recovery was back in 2016, was probably one of the most darkest, difficult times in my life. My family and I were going through a major crucible moment. And this moment, it greatly impacted my 5-year-old daughter at the time. And so between 2016 and 2018, before I discovered grief recovery, we were having a really difficult time kind of navigating our new normal as a result of that crucible moment. My daughter had undergone therapy, and many things started to happen during that time in which I actually didn't realize that she was experiencing tremendous grief in addition to what happened to her back in 2016. And I guess I came to a point where I realized that, with my daughter going through therapy once a month, what was I doing at home to further help her? And that's when I discovered Helping Children with Loss, which is a different program, or a program underneath the grief recovery method. And I took the course, and after learning so much about what, I could be doing to help my daughter, I decided to go ahead and pursue my certification in grief recovery. And it's been something that I'll never regret. Grief recovery taught me the correct tools and methods to, help my child and help the rest of our family deal with this. And yeah, it's been an honor to serve. And not long after that, I actually had a miscarriage. I suffered a miscarriage back in December of 2019. And even as a grief recovery specialist, I wasn't exempt from the pain of this loss. And because my original journey that brought me to grief recovery was not death related, this was definitely something that we learn as grief recovery specialists, is the method is taught and can be used no matter the type of loss, right? And so after my miscarriage, I realized I did the work about maybe 3 weeks after my loss, after the miscarriage, and it helped me so much. And so, I continue to do this work, and it is an honor. It is an honor to serve, and it is an honor to contribute to our community during this time, and to deliver awareness on the topic of grief is something I think that the world needs. And so we are here to tell you a little bit more about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Raylene, for sharing that. I'll never forget the first time that I met you and you being in the grief recovery certification training. But your story definitely has inspired so many people that at least I know. So I really appreciate your presence here tonight. And Marcella, you're up next.
Yes. Hi, my name is Marcella Takai. I am a school counselor by trade. I am also a mother, a sister, a friend, a daughter. And what has brought me to grief recovery was originally as a school counselor, I would take my students to the Youth for Youth conference. And during the Youth for Youth conference, when they have breakout sessions for students, they would have breakout sessions for adults. And Michelle had just come back from her training and she was sharing a grief talk with the adults. And I just remember being impacted by the way she expressed grief, the way she expressed just the information about dealing with loss. I was in awe of the fact that she could speak of her emotions the way she did and how it was helping me to think about all the losses I had experienced in life. And I remember just thinking, one day I want to help people to know grief this way, and I want to be able to help them to work through their grief. Well, a few years passed after that, and never touched it, never thought about it, never really got connected with Michelle to figure out, how does a certification like this happen? What can I do? And then about 2 years ago, one of my friends who is very close to me, we go to church together, her husband had passed away and she had heard about a grief talk. And when I saw the names and I saw the flyer, I was like, I know this person. Oh, I know what this is about. I think I should join this with you. Let me go and I'll be a supportive friend. And when I went, I found out at that time that they were going to be doing a certification. And I thought, wow, what an answered prayer. This is so many years later. Time had passed, but I was like, the opportunity is now presenting itself. And so that's what initially brought me. I've dealt with a lot of different kinds of loss in my life, and not really healed from those losses. One major one was a suicide within my family, and that was when I was about 8 years old. And I remember and recollect every emotion, every feeling, every action of the people around me. And I recognized that my family did not know how to handle the grief that it was experiencing. And so learning the skills and the tools and the method in how to deal with grief has been just, it's been a godsend, really. It's really been something that I feel like an answered prayer, even after so many years. And so I'm grateful that I now understand some of these tools, that I can share it with my family and my friends, and I can be, like Raylene had said, of service to our community, because grief is not always an easy thing to talk about, because naturally it's not culturally acceptable to be talking about things that hurt us, right? The grief that we go through. Happy moments, yes. Joyous moments, of course. Anything to celebrate, let's talk about it. But when it comes to tough stuff, grief is it's hard to deal with. And so I'm grateful to be on this platform to share with you a little bit about what we know and what we can contribute.
Thank you, Marcella. And just your passion again with working with the kids from as far back as we go with the Youth Conference, and then now advancing to, just expand some of your knowledge and skills to have a greater reach. And so I know that I appreciate that, and a lot of other people that you're going to be servicing and just being a resource to will definitely appreciate that. So thank you again. So just to further advance, again, this is a safe space, everyone. It's a very informal setting. We're going to go around. We have a few questions. The ladies are going to give their input, insight, feedback, some helpful tips, maybe some of the challenges that they've even experienced through this whole shift with the global crisis and the pandemic. Most importantly, here in our island, with the P Core 1 in place. And then of course, all over the world where there's a lot of stricter guidelines in, you know, what's open and where people can go to and what's accessible. So take what is helpful for you. Whatever is not helpful, you could leave right here in the Zoom room. But if it is helpful, definitely take that away, because the ladies are going to be sharing some amazing tips, some things that they have experienced on their own, and things I'm very certain that you could practice and you could use when you leave tonight. So welcome everybody again. Thank you so much. And just a reminder, if you have questions, you can go ahead and write those questions in the chat box, and we will address that at the end of the talk. So the first question for you ladies, are you guys ready? Are you guys nervous? The first question is, how has teleworking impacted your lives since you've had to telework? And anyone can answer that.
Okay, I could go first. So how has teleworking impacted my life? Well, it's definitely caused a lot of shifts and changes. I don't drive as much as I used to. I don't get to go for morning coffee like I used to. My daughter's first day of school was definitely a different type of experience. I couldn't walk her into school, and now my days are spent multitasking and juggling the demands of being a mother, now being a teacher, being a worker, trying to make sure that, you know, I make those Zoom calls on time for work, making sure that the common area, the spaces that we use to work and she uses to attend online classes are adequate enough for all of us. Remembering when it's time for lunch and having to physically prepare the lunch is it's another challenge. Making sure all the devices are charged. I mean, even something as simple as that, you know, it's such a major shift, because before I only had to remember to charge my phone before work the next morning. Now I'm having to remember to charge every other device down to my earphones, because I use these for my meetings. Even having to help my daughter through online classes, which I'm sure has, you know, posed many different shifts for her and has caused her, you know, some grief as well. You know, I see how nervous she is being on camera all the time. It's not something she's used to. Um, even getting the courage to ask for help in the middle of this Google Meets, you know, classroom where everyone's talking and maybe she doesn't know when is her cue to talk. It's things like that that really we had to get used to. And so that's a few things that have changed for us here over at my house. So over to you, Marcella.
Yes, teleworking has been a challenge. I'm a school counselor, and so I'm not meeting with my students face to face like I normally would. And so I'm doing a lot more from home. And a lot more of what we're doing is creating space on Google Classroom to connect with our students. We are, I'm in charge of taking care of our Instagram social media to connect with our students. I'm doing a lot more with technology that I wouldn't normally do if I had been at my workplace. And yes, I can totally relate to the juggling of hats all in one place. My husband is a teacher. He's busy on his computer, creating lessons for his students. My daughter, she's online doing her schoolwork. She's a second grade, and you know, I'm having to assist her with that amidst taking care of what I need to take care of and doing the cooking every now and then. I know we talked about this the other day, Raylene, but like even going to the bathroom and recognizing that, oh, I got to wipe that up, I got to clean this, and getting easily distracted because the environment that we're working in is not, our mindset had to shift that this is now my place of work. This is not just my place of home and comfort. And, you know, the couch can be used as an office space for some people, and then the kitchen table is an office space, and the dining room table is another office space. And depending on where you land during that time, that's where you're going to start your work, and that's where you continue. And usually it's not fluid. It's not, the regular 8 hours that you would normally do at your own office, doing the things that you would only do within your office space. Um, this is a challenge for me regarding my students. I think emotionally, one of the things I struggle with is I do miss the physical contact with my students. And I worry about my outlying students who don't have the technology, that don't have the means enable or that gives them the ability to receive counseling services. So whatever communication I do receive on Instagram or email or through our Google Classroom, those those mean a whole lot to us. But I'm trying to figure out through this pandemic how to meet the needs and demands as with my role um, from home, and it is not easy. I usually try to make it into work physically um, once or twice throughout the week, but there's also that fear. A lot of people um, coming up positive. There is that fear, and if you have people at home that their immune system's not as great, my husband, um, he has psoriasis, and it it is it does affect his immunity. So those kinds of things are also in the back of our minds, and worries that cause us to also feel stressed. So teleworking has it's changed a lot, and I kind of miss my office space, and I miss my own space to do the work that I do. So, but I mostly miss my students. That's ultimately, I really do miss my students.
So I thank you ladies for sharing that. And, as I'm teleworking too, it resonates with myself. So I'm certain that it resonates with a lot of other listeners that are listening on Facebook and also here in the Zoom room. It's so funny because there are days where, we have patterns that we do. So usually I would shower in the evenings. But when I decide to just go take a quick shower in the afternoon and I put on some jean shorts and a nicer t-shirt, my daughter looks at me, she's like, where are you going, Mom? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to work. And then I point to the living room couch, right? So even at that, she's in panic, like, what are you doing? Where are you headed to? Because again, it's like, why are you out of your pajamas, or why are you out of the clothing that you woke up in when you're teleworking? And you had also mentioned, some of the conflicting feelings, like being home because you get to help your children with what they're doing. But then I also heard that you mentioned that you miss your coffee runs, you miss, meeting your friends, you miss your students. So those conflicting feelings are definitely what we identify as grief. Because of the pattern and the behaviors that are changing. So thank you, ladies, for that. The next, we're going to flow right through. What are some ways in which you have adjusted to these changes? Were there some new coping skills that you learned? Sometimes, because coping could be both positive and negative, could you share a little bit of how you adjusted to this change?
Sure, I'll go ahead and share, Michelle, thank you. So particularly speaking with my daughter and with the tools and methods that we've learned through grief recovery, I actually developed a checklist to help her get acclimated to this new way of attending school. And, I just really want to shed light on that. Some of the things we have no control over, right? Like, the fact that our children have to do distance learning or have to do homeschooling and we have to be the teacher. That's definitely something that we can't control, right? But what we can control is what we do with our feelings and how we can help our children to verbalize what they're feeling, to give their pain, to give their losses a voice. This will help them adjust a lot better than if they weren't to give their feelings, verbalize their feelings, if you will, right? So for my daughter, what I did was she has this crate, she has a bin filled with supplies for school. On the outside of the bin, I created a 5-step checklist, right? And the first 4 of the checklists are, simply sharpen your pencils after school, upload all of your assignments to the online platform, make sure you put everything back in the bin neatly, Charge your iPad, don't overcharge it. And then the fifth and final step is talk about how school was and how you felt about it. Okay. So emotional check-ins with our kids are definitely something, well, with my child, an emotional check-in is it's essential in my home. And so every day after school, I mean, regardless of the answer is usually the same every day, right? Oh, school is good, mom, I felt good about it. School was good, I felt good about it. There's going to be the one day that maybe school wasn't so good for her. Maybe she didn't feel so good about school. And I'll give her that opportunity to talk about it. And so in my home, we have the 5-step checklist. And then for me, because I'm teleworking and, you know, we can't forget about ourselves, right? Um, my spouse and I, we usually have like an hour to 2 hours at the end of the night after dinner where we sit outside, we light the citronella candle, and we talk about how our day went and we take turns doing it. He talks, he tells me how his day went because he's essential, so he leaves. And then when he's done, I talk about how my day went, you know, how it went with our daughter and how work was. And so emotional check-ins, again, being reinforced in the home for both children and adults. That's what I've done so far. Well, thank you. On to you, Marcella.
So how I've adjusted, well, I'm not quite fully adjusted. I'll be honest. I don't quite know what my place is as far as teleworking. I mean, checking my emails, making sure that I'm on Zoom calls when we need to be on Zoom calls, making sure that I respond, you know, to whatever is needed. I have assisted with our, you know, when we have to pass out hard copies, and I actually appreciate those moments that we're able to pass out hard copies because I get to see some of our students' faces. But I haven't quite gotten into a rhythm as far as um, the days that I'm going to choose to go in, and then the days that I will do it just from home. Um, so that's something I'm still trying to work out, and I feel so many different emotions. Um, I feel I feel some guilt because I feel like I want to do more with regard to working, but I find myself doing a lot more regarding my child at home learning, and I this distance learning has really impacted um, it's impacted our home completely. I feel like I do more as a teacher for my 7-year-old than I do as um, what is required of me or expected of me, or what I would hope to be able to contribute more so as a school counselor. And so I'm still trying to find my place in that. I don't know if, you know, other people might be having those same challenges. I'm just trying to make it work, you know. I I mean, we're trying to do character education lessons, trying to get things out to our students um, that will help them while they're away from us, you know, that will be things that would be helpful and useful to them. And I recognize um, that there is a lot I think we need to take into consideration of ourselves, meeting the needs that we have as well in order for us to give back. And I like, Raylene, what you shared about how you and your husband close off the day, you know, because you're able to express those emotions, and you model that for your child, but then two, you're getting your own emotions out there and verbalizing them. So I think that's something I do need to do more of, and I need to connect more with other peers that are in the same boat, that maybe can hear what it is that's on my heart, you know, and really be a heart with ears for me, you know, some people who could just be my safe space to say, you know what, I'm struggling. This is hard. You want to know how many times I got frustrated with my kid doing schoolwork today? Like, I am so grateful for teachers. I am so grateful for my the schools. I can't say it enough, you know. I went into counseling because I love to talk one-on-one with students and small groups, and help students in that way. But man, when I think of a teacher with 20 some kids, um, you know, and having to help all these different learners at the same time. I have one kid in my kitchen. I think about parents who have 3 elementary school students and are trying to figure that out. I feel like, you know, we can't compare losses. I understand that, and we can't, um, we shouldn't say, you know, one is harder than the other or worse than this, and one's better or one's not. But I can just empathize. I can feel, you know, if I can have this emotional stress over working and teaching and being a wife and taking care of my home and having and feeling all these responsibilities, I can only imagine what the rest of my community is feeling as well, you know. And I just I put it out there because I think we do need a lot more self-care with regard to trying to get this working for us. And it's not a perfect system. Everybody is learning. Everybody is um, trying their best to figure out how to make this work during this global pandemic.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you, ladies. And, you know, I'm listening to everything that you're saying. And I love the idea, Raylene, of the checklist. I love the idea that there's some type of structure that you're utilizing and you're implementing in your household, and a routine, because I know children really need to have that routine, and it shouldn't change so frequently. And being able to do something like that for your kids and, you know, getting them involved, they have ownership in taking care of it. So when we teach them how to charge their units, then that could alleviate some of the stress that we have in having to remember to charge 3 to 4 laptops and, you know, 4 phone devices versus just ours. So I really appreciate that tip. And Marcella, you know, as you were talking about too, and you, like you mentioned how you're dealing with one student, which is your child, and again, the reality of it, not everybody's households are the same. Everyone's unique. And I am here with my child, and my place is pretty big for 2 people, but it's still, it causes disruption also, you know, like we're both on, she's on online classes and I'm on Zoom calls and we're just right across one another. There's a lot of voiceovers. It's very distracting. She'll chuckle in the middle of her class and I'm in the middle of a real important planning for a suicide prevention month with work. And it's just, you know, it overlaps in one of those things. So being creative and just adjusting to that. I appreciate also, Marcella, the fact that you are being very honest, total honest and vulnerable to actually say, I don't really have it all together at the moment. I'm feeling it and I'm adjusting and I'm working through, but I don't have everything set in stone at the moment. And I think just realizing again what those feelings are that could be related to your reactions to the losses that you guys have mentioned, right? Will allow you to be proactive in a sense. And so thank you for sharing that. Moving on to just, it's kind of all together with the next question. And some of you already had shared it. Both of you kind of shared a little bit of that, but tips, insights that you could offer others who are teleworking. So again, what are some of the, maybe in the beginning you weren't adjusting so good, or, you know, there was some, maybe, I know for me in the beginning, when I had to go through this whole thing with when my daughter came back from the mainland, it was really difficult to try to create a better dynamics in the household. Like we would look at each other after the day and we would just kind of be like rolling our eyeballs to one another, you know? And it's a moment of like, oh my gosh, do we really feel this way about each other? But it's just about being cooped up in a space with the same people. And one of the things that I realized that sometimes you may have to find, like you talked about, Marcella, the heart with ears, right? And the heart with ears is a person who we ask if they could just listen to us with their heart and listen to us with their heart and ears, and not try to fix us, not give us solutions to our problems, but just to hear us. Because grievers don't want to be fixed, they want to be heard. And sometimes you may have to find that person outside of your household because you spend 24 hours with your children and your spouse and whoever else is living with you, and maybe they don't have the capacity to be your emotional support at the moment. And that's what I'm learning. So the next part are some of the tips and insights that maybe you have adjusted and kind of strengthened as you are experiencing this whole lockdown and stay at home.
I'll go ahead and provide some of my tips, Michelle. So, um, what I do is, where we can't give you all the advice, all of the intellectual advice, right, to solve the physical challenges of teleworking and distance learning. We're here to give you advice on, how to maybe navigate your emotional journey. For me, what I really like that my job does, for me as a teleworker, is every 2 weeks we have like a immediate department meeting. And what happens in these meetings is our boss, our manager, our supervisor will kind of go around and ask us, what's going on, what can we do to support you? How are you doing this week in the last 2 weeks? Is there anything that you're working on that you need the support? Maybe you need the team's support, on maybe one project, or more this week than you did last week. So, for work, I think that it's really great, and it helps me as an employee when my manager does. It really is an emotional check-in every 2 weeks. And so I really like that, because then my coworkers know where I'm at. They know what I'm working on, and maybe they can't help directly with the project that I'm on or the task that I'm on, but they can help support, mentally and emotionally. So if I shoot a text out that maybe I need something, maybe they can be a little bit more, empathetic with me and understanding, that Ray's working on this pressing project, and let me go ahead and try and get this to her since I'm in the office and she's teleworking. So I think communication, and really verbalizing what it is you're going through and what it is that you need to further be supported can really help, again, adjust to, the challenges of teleworking. Um, I also, to help reduce some of the stress is, sometimes my manager is a little bit more flexible about meetings, and she'll ask me, well, when are you available? When are you free? And so it is stressful to kind of take a look at my daughter's calendar and figure out, okay, so on this day at this hour, she usually has a test or she has to attend mass virtually, right? How am I going to do that? So there are those challenges with that. And what I do is, when I'm not in a Zoom call and she's on her class, um, I'm sorry, when I'm not in a meeting but she's doing class, I let her iPad's free, it's open, no earphones, she can focus, the room is hers. And then when I have a meeting, I kindly ask her like, hey honey, can you put your earphones on? I'm gonna be on a meeting for the next 15 minutes. And then so in my space, it's completely quiet, right? As I'm in this meeting. So just a quick, just one of the tips that I found work for me. But again, this is really about the emotional check-in, and helping to encourage, giving your feelings a voice and verbalizing that and doing emotional check-ins with each other. So that's what works for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. That's so important again. I love how you underscored the emotional check-in, because sometimes, part of the midst of grief is keeping yourself busy. And we're dealing with grief in our household, but we're also dealing with the grief of hearing the news every single day with the cases rising, with the deaths. Yesterday, a 45-year-old woman, right, passed away. And then we also, one of our dear clergymen. And so now it's like it's getting more real, because there's faces that are attached with all the deaths, right? And it's somebody's loved one nonetheless. So my condolences to all the families and everybody else who has been impacted. But it's difficult again to shift, and sometimes keeping yourself busy and just going from one Zoom room to the next, or going from online class and online sessions to the next, and doing your daily routine and not having that emotional check-in could actually lead you to, feeling burnt out. And then maybe some of the STIRBs, the short-term energy relieving behaviors that you guys may talk about. We're going to talk about that when we start talking about how can we tell if our children are grieving. So those check-ins are really, really important. Marcella, do you have anything to add on to that question?
Yes, I would suggest to still have a little bit of me time. I know that maybe your me time is going to look very different, but your mental, spiritual, emotional health is so necessary to be effective in whatever space you're in, and whatever hat you're wearing. for me, it is more challenging because I'm home and only home. Before, I used to meet girlfriends for coffee, and we would go over a devotional together, or I'd go pray with people, or I'd go on my own and go pray somewhere like at the beach. And I could still do that actually. I might take myself up on that. But when I'm at home and I need to separate myself from everybody, I'll be honest that my bathroom has become a very safe um, space for me, so that I can go ahead and read a little bit. I could pray. I could get some time to really get myself uh, emotionally set for the day, you know, and sometimes that's outside under a canopy. I don't know how everyone else is set up, but I think a little bit of that time, I mean, whether it's only 10 minutes or it's 30 minutes or it's a whole hour you're able to do, then do it. But having that mindfulness to really you know, set your intentions and get yourself prepared and get your mindset ready to do whatever it is that you're going to do. I think that is one of the things that has really helped to kind of help me focus. And I mean, yeah, I have to say that that's one of the things, aside from being able to chat, and I know this is in regards to teleworking. A lot of the things that come about with my own emotional space or my own concerns or worries, I do have colleagues that I can turn to, that we have our own chat, and we message each other, hey, this is what's going on with me. You know, and they're very supportive, and vice versa, you know, when they tell me, hey, this is where I'm at and this is what's going on with me, and we celebrate one another, and we also pray for each other, you know, when things are tough or things are hard, or we ask and or offer, how can we help with that situation or circumstance. um, Guys, I'm going to be honest. I don't know if I've told you, but I am sitting in my car right now just to kind of stay. Like, the reality is, when you have to find your own space, you find your own space. And right now I'm in my car doing this because of just the fact that, you know, my daughter's now playing. She's done with school, so she's done with her schoolwork. She's now playing Legos in the living room. My husband's enjoying some TV. The noise level is just like, it wouldn't do for this. So I had to find my own space, and I realized that this is not unusual for some people these days, that the car has actually been their safe space. So finding that time to have your own time, and having some colleagues or people that can connect and relate to what you're going through, to talk about what you're feeling, those, like Raylene said, those emotional check-ins are very important, and healthy and helpful
Right.
for your day.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And it goes back to what we talk about. And as we were doing the planning meeting for this, you know, we talked about basically the example of the airplane. So I know, like, many of us probably have not traveled, you know, in the last few months, but if you recall, if you've ever ridden an airplane, the flight attendant, well, now, so it's more like they have it on video, right? Pre-recorded. But when they go over all of the security measures, like they show you the safety lights, and they tell you what to do in case the plane malfunction or goes down. When it comes to the oxygen mask, right? That it shows the oxygen mask coming from above, and it tells you who. So my question to you is, who do you put that oxygen mask on first, right? Even if you have a child sitting next to you, a loved one, an elderly, the person on the video or the live flight attendant will tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Because if you are not able to give yourself oxygen, you're not going to be able to help the other person next to you. And Marcella, that was a perfect example. And many times, again, maybe there's some conflicting feelings of parents, of, you know, the caregivers in the household, having to escape to have some me time, to do some self-care, while their children are looking for them. Because I know that if you're a mom, like every couple of seconds, mom, right? Can you help me? And before, we had 8 hours at least to focus on work, and we had other people to help us with all the secondary stuff. But now, for real, living in the household is a 24-hour job. So teleworking does not end. I don't work from 8 to 5, you know, the structured 8 to 5. There's sometimes where I work better in the evenings, and I'm going to have to get my emails and respond to my emails in the evening because it's quieter. So thank you, ladies. We're going to move right into, how can I tell if my child is grieving? And that is like a question I believe that many people have been asking me. So how would you be able to tell Marcella and Raylene if your child is grieving?
Okay, thank you, Michelle. So how do I know if my child's grieving? Well, you know, first of all, I want to say that because we're human, we're all grievers, right? We're all grievers. We may, you know, have some stronger grieving experiences in different parts of our life compared to now, right? But grieving is still grieving, and loss is still a loss. And at the moment that you're experiencing the grief or loss, you are experiencing it at 100%, right? And so that's what we learn in grief recovery is don't, you know, discount your feelings or your emotions, because what you're feeling today is you're feeling it at 100% of its capacity. And so how do you know if your child's grieving? You know, what I usually ask myself, and this is what I practice with my daughter, is were there any major changes or shifts in her life recently, right? Because we know that grief is the conflicting feelings caused by an end or change in a familiar pattern of behavior, right? Grief can also be defined as the conflicting feelings as a result of loss of any kind. And so I ask myself, right, you know, maybe you moved, you know, and yes, distance learning has its own, you know, set of grief, but we also, you know, should not forget, right, the things that maybe our children or our child was going through before the pandemic happened. So you know, moving can cause grief, moving to a new school, moving to a new house, um, um, death, losing a goldfish. Maybe their iPad screen cracked and now they don't have it anymore. Maybe they had that teddy bear that they slept with every night and now, you know, it's lost. We can't find it. Maybe dad has been deployed, mom has been deployed. Maybe you were teleworking for a whole month and now you're having to go back to work. These are events that can cause grief and loss in our children. Even something like their favorite series ending or getting taken off of Netflix, you know, how can we relate these different changes of behaviors or patterns to our children, right? Sometimes we might even identify that our children or our child might be stirping. So stirbs are it can be you know, maybe they're eating more, maybe they're eating less, maybe they're sleeping more, maybe they're sleeping less, maybe they sometimes it can even be interpreted as acting out, right? Maybe they're having some tantrums that they don't usually have. And back in 2016, during this crucible moment that I was telling you about with my daughter, she started to she would cry, she would yell, which was what, you know, what brought us to bring her to therapy. But I wasn't really understanding what all that was. And she was just trying to verbalize her feelings, tell us about what she was feeling. So, you know, again, you know, just ask yourself, right? Has your child gone through any major shift or change? It can even be something really simple, but your child relates it, you know, as a big deal in their life. And remember that whatever the loss may be, our children are experiencing it at 100%. For my daughter, right before our lockdown happened, her paternal grandparents relocated to Las Vegas. And that was really hard on her. It was really hard on her because, in addition to having to stay home, not see teachers, not see friends, not be able to travel or even go to the supermarket or the village store, a big part of her heart moved across the world. And so, talking to them, you know, she had to figure out when was it okay to talk to them, what time was it in Las Vegas versus what time was it here, you know. So I was there to kind of help her navigate that. And the day that her grandparents moved away, we came home from the airport, she was just crying like, She was saying all kinds of stuff like, I don't like, I don't like my papa's job. Why do they have to take him away? And I just let her talk, because she was experiencing that at 100%. And then later on, I kind of came up with strategies to, well, how can I help her adjust to this? And so we taught her how to figure out what time it was in Las Vegas using Siri. And now she knows that when it's nighttime here, it's morning for grandma and grandpa. And when it's morning here, it's nighttime for grandma and grandpa. And so she's developed her own call schedule with them. And she feels a whole lot better about that. So, those are some ways you can identify if your child's grieving. So, thank you. On to you, Marcella.
Sorry, someone just knocked on my window and I can't see. So, sorry. How can I tell? Definitely, thanks, Raylene. All those things you shared were, I mean, I just thought about just kind of the losses that our children are experiencing right now, right, with the pandemic and the limitations and the way they express their emotions. And one of the things I learned with helping children with grief is with loss is asking them. Like, I know that seems so like unusual to do because a lot of times we think, oh, the kids, they don't really know, or they don't really, because they can't verbalize what they're feeling or what they're going through, doesn't mean they don't really know. And I remember as a kid that people didn't really ask me, what did I feel about things? What did I think about things? How were things making me feel? When I experienced the loss of our family members, I just conjured up my own things in my head. And I felt like, the grown-ups, I don't know if I felt they didn't care, but it's like it wasn't my place to say anything, right? But now I recognize, having learned about, recognizing this, the STIRBs, the short-term energy releasing behaviors, when they're acting out or when they're sleeping too much, eating too much, not eating enough, the things like acting out, right? That we can actually ask them, that we recognize that our children are not, I've learned through the grief recovery method, they're not half human, they're full human, and they feel emotions the same way we feel emotions. It may be at a different perspective, it may be at a, maybe they don't have the words to express all that they feel, but you can ask them. I'm sorry, let me just find it. Sorry, Taya, I'm on a call. Sorry. Okay, thank you. Love you. Bye. Sorry, guys. Bye. Sorry. So this is so funny. Sorry. Yes, Taya. I apologize for this. But this really is the reality. Like, so asking them, sorry, where was I? My daughter would like to say hi. You could say hi. Hi. Okay. So she's come into my space. But asking them, like, how do you feel? Not right now, sorry. How do you feel? What do you think about what's going on? They're hearing. Hey, Alani. Yeah. I am on a call and I need you to not do that, okay? I'm sorry, she just disconnected my.
Okay, I could go ahead and come back to you with the last question. Can you hear me? Did you have, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Sorry.
Okay, you want to continue?
Can you hear me?
It's okay.
Sure. So, but asking them what they're feeling or what they're thinking, what they're going through, what they think about the things they hear, because not only are they, because they're on social media a lot more now than they were before. I have to say that, at least for my child, because technology is so accessible, being home for the many hours they're home now, is they're hearing things about the pandemic. They're seeing things about the pandemic. They are also I mean, my daughter actually asked me about the whole Black Lives Matter movement. So there are things that are going on in their head, going on in their mind. They're being fed this information, and they're feeling a lot about it. So if you ask them, if you talk to them, get them to express their own emotions. If they can't speak full sentences about it, you can draw pictures. You can ask them to point to things, how they're feeling. Those are all. It validates how they feel, and it'll help them to feel the emotion at the moment, and express it at the moment. Sorry.
Wow, you did amazing. And all the little, as Darlene mentioned last show, the nuggets from both of you, what you had just drawn out. And it's, again, giving that safe space to your children in your household. It's about giving grief a voice and letting them know that it really is okay. But you have also talked a little bit about, you modeling it first and being real honest with them. And so that was a perfect example. Marcella, when your daughter came in to do that, we know that the struggle is definitely real, but you handled yourself like a pro. This is not the first time, right? Thank you, ladies. We're moving right into the last question. And I think this is going to be the question for the night. And the question is, what are some things I could do, which is you, what are some things I could do to help my child through major changes or shifts in their lives? So I'm certain that the audience, again, that is viewing through Facebook, hello, thank you for joining us. And again, our Zoom participants, thank you for taking the time to register and be on this. Let me just remind you, if you have questions, go ahead and type that in the chat box now as we begin to close out and just summarize the evening. We're going to address those questions shortly. So again, the question, what are some things, I'm sorry, I think I asked that already. I apologize. I'm moving on to number 6. What are some creative strategies you can offer others to help manage and cope during these hard times in the home front? So what is the 2 top things that you have been doing in your households that could be of a help and a tip to other people?
Sure. Thanks, Shell. So I'll go ahead and answer. I'll go ahead and answer the first question to close out the evening. What are some things I can do to help my child through major changes or shifts in their life? You can start by going first, right? Talking about how you feel and telling your truth, telling your emotional truth rather. So go first, talk about your feelings and be honest about yourself. When you do that, when you lead with that, your children more likely will be comfortable and feel like it's a safe place for them. So encourage the use of feeling words. We want to, encourage asking, how do you feel about something, right? Because what you think about something is important, and how you feel about it might be something totally different, right? So taking them from this space to this space is, it's really what the grief recovery method is all about. We practice not minimizing how they feel, right? So there's this quote, and in grief we learn about this quote, and I'm sure you've all heard it. The man without shoes complained until he saw the man without feet, right? And where that philosophy can draw a lot of gratitude, if not used correctly, it can also minimize, right? And so we have to identify that what our children are going through, what we are going through, we're experiencing it at 100%. And we understand that gratitude is one thing, but really not minimizing goes with, listening to them 100% wholeheartedly and really allowing yourself to be in that space with them and bringing yourself, into that space as well. And maybe, the pandemic is something that hasn't touched you directly. Maybe the pandemic is something that's touched you directly. Either way, it is a shift, it is a change, and it's caused so much loss and grief for many of us that, bringing ourselves to that point to talk about it. Sometimes maybe our family might think, it's silly. What are we talking about this for? But, slowly incorporating things like this will help to change the culture, right? Of how we communicate our emotional truth. And reinforce feelings, right? So if your child comes to you and says, Mom, I'm really sad about the 10-year-old boy that passed away, right? Because my daughter was really sad about that. She was just taken back at dinner when I told her the news. You know, and she expressed that she was sad about it. And I said, you know, I'm sad too, right? So if they come to you and they say, you know, I'm so upset, I'm so frustrated at this, and that, you know, sweetie, I would be frustrated at that too, is really reinforcing their feelings and helping them to feel comfortable to get out of that space and be vulnerable with the feelings, right? And guardians can practice this, grandparents can practice this. If you're around children, you know, maybe you don't have children and that's okay. But if you have nieces and nephews, godchildren, you can do this too. You can help them in this way. So, you know, that's what I practice. That's what I try. Sometimes I'm not perfect at it. Sometimes it's hard to undo and unteach, you know, the things that we were taught that weren't so helpful. But it's about growing the knowledge, right, and doing it step by step. So that's what we're here for.
I apologize, guys. I kind of overlapped the questions. Thank you, Raylene, for coming back with that save. Marcella, is there anything else you would like to add on what are some things that you could do to help your child?
Yes, some of the things that I would definitely do is to suggest that we stop doing what we've been known to do. So there's a lot of myths around grief and loss. There's a lot that we do that we will say, this will pass. Oh, be strong. You know, we'll get through this. And not to say that they're not well-intentioned statements, right? But it does not validate how the person is feeling. It does not give them permission to feel what they feel at the moment. So instead of um, reinforcing those myths or giving them something else to do, because we can easily train them to just replace the loss with something else, you know, that when they start to break down or melt down, you just hand them their iPad and say, here, play a game, you know, or you just tell them to you know, yeah, you compare a loss, right? Like, well, at least you're not this or that. You, at least you're not. And my daughter, my older daughter, I've shared this with a bunch of people, a bunch of the specialists anyway. I've shared this, that my daughter had told me one time, I think she was like 16, and I was trying to help her to be grateful for what she was experiencing versus complaining about where she was at. And she told me this statement, and it rings in my head, is just because there are starving people in Africa doesn't mean I'm not sad. And I was like, every time I say it, it reminds me to just remember that when we're feeling what we're feeling, when our children are feeling what they're feeling, that don't suppress it, don't push it away, don't be scared to hear it. Prepare yourself even to hear it. Like, get yourself ready to be the heart with ears that your family needs, that your friends may need. Make sure you have some people that can be hearts with ears for you. I was just saying this to the ladies the other day, that, you know, I was going through some of my own personal um, losses and grief and struggling and wrestling with emotion, and I wanted to talk to somebody, but I remember in my mind thinking, oh, it's late, oh, but it's too early for them here. And you know, I realized that I wasn't really prepared for that, and I think had I wrote down a list of names, um, and been able to say, okay, if that person doesn't, you know, doesn't answer, then somebody else is going to answer, and I can unload and I can share my emotional truths with people. And so our kids need that from us, but in order for us to be able to give it to them, like Michelle shared earlier, you know, we got to put the oxygen mask on first, you know, and like Raylene said, we have to model it, we have to demonstrate it. And so let them feel what they are feeling, let them communicate it. I know one of the questions that have been asked is, how do you get people, how do you get youth who are shutting down and finding it difficult to open up, how do you get them to open up? um, it's something that I know I can't force it out of people. What have I've found has been helpful is giving them the space, making sure they know it's safe. You know, if I tell, this works with me with my students at school as well. I, not that I'm able to do that at the moment, but is letting them know always that you are there, that you are present, that it is safe for them to tell you how you feel, how they feel, that you're not just going to turn them away and just be like, oh, suck it up, move on, there are bigger problems in this world to deal with. Those comments, those statements, those oh, just wait till you're an adult. You think you have problems, try paying bills. I know these statements so well because I've said them, I've done it before, and I have to be very mindful to catch my words and to listen more than speak. And so when people feel safe, when your children feel safe, when your students or the youth that you're working with or the people that you're around feel safe to talk to you, they're going to be more willing to open up. They're going to be more willing. And maybe it won't be that moment that you first tell them, hey, I'm open, I'm all ears, tell me. They may not be ready at that moment, but you say that to them enough times, they recognize that you're the safe space, they'll come back. They'll come back and say, you know what, this is what I'm feeling. You know what, this is, I'm sad. One of our specialists even said her 4-year-old nephew's comment is, my heart is owie, and so however they communicate it, whenever they communicate it, receive it, and validate their feelings. Let them know that you're there. You don't need to give them the answers. You don't need to tell them how to fix it. You don't need to replace it with something else, or give them your 3 hours worth of words of wisdom that I would drench my 16-year-old in before. They just need to be heard. And so that's very important. I think validating their emotions is going to make a big impact, and also getting your emotions validated, um, getting your own heart and emotions out to somebody is just as important. So make sure that you have your own emergency toolbox, your toolkit of, those meditations, those prayers, the people that you're contact, the healthy things that you can do to help you with the emotions that you're going through during this crazy, crazy time, because it is crazy. Um, so hope that helps. I don't know if that all made sense or if I was everywhere with that, but hope that helps.
So much to take in. I mean, we can do this topic in 3 to 4 sessions, right? And it can actually be a in-depth workshop and training. But I really appreciate you ladies for offering some of those tips. And I know for me as a mom, one of the best things that I have learned and adjusted in my journey with my daughter, especially being a single mom, and when my husband passed away, my daughter was only 11 years old, going into 12. And before I knew what I knew about grief, that's what I would do. I would compare her loss. I would shut her down. When she acted out in anger, which that is not a typical response for her, but when she started to act out in anger, I would think she was a defiant child. I would think she was being disrespectful. And I would be, instead of trying to figure out where that source of anger was coming from, I would basically implement some punishment or some consequences, right? You're going to be grounded, so on and so forth. And so our children have different ways of communicating their feelings and their reactions to the different losses, not being able to see their friends for how long? I mean, they want to be out of school until they're out of school. And, 3 months is a long time, but it's been since March. It's overlapped from last school year to the new school year. For those individuals, kindergartners, their first day, that's supposed to be something that's so joyful, and they don't get to experience that. Seniors last year, right? They dealt with all that grief with not being able to graduate, have a normal and typical graduation. They weren't able to do that. But allowing that space again, Marcella, and all the tips really that you guys had mentioned kind of underscores everything we talked about tonight. Again, it's just what you had mentioned in the very beginning. What are the factors that you can actually take charge of, right? And adjust, because you're not going to get it straight and it's not going to be right the first time. And I know that sometimes our children, they're very real. They will tell you straight up if something is good, bad, ugly, right? It doesn't smell good. You're not pretty. so on and so forth. They will make all these type of comments. And sometimes as a parent, it's a little hard to hear. It's a little hard to hear. And many times our children may not feel like they want to talk to us. And that's why giving that permission and setting that safe space and being the model, being that example for them will assure them that it's safe to talk, because they don't want to disappoint us. They don't want to disappoint us. And they are very concerned, just like we're concerned about their feelings. They're concerned if they're going to hurt our feelings, right? And many times I have been hurt by things that my daughter may have said to me, but I have to remember that this is the only way we're going to be able to get the individual to express what they're feeling so we can find the helps and supports that are needed. Because sometimes it might even be past grief recovery specialists, right? It might be counseling services. It might be some other type of services. So I just want, we are 15 minutes into our time frame. So I just want to, you basically answered a lot of the last question, which was, what are some creative strategies? You offered many different creative strategies that you use in your household. Were there any last thoughts, ladies, on that? Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask Darlene to go ahead and put up the slide with the resources.
Michelle, we can't hear you.
Okay, I was practicing. I said, this is not a one and done, like I mentioned in the last live. These grief talks are just here to inspire you, to motivate you, to maybe look at, some of the things that you're experiencing, and just thinking of ways that you could reach out and maybe get some help for yourself if it's needed, or for maybe the people that you are taking care of as well in your household, outside of your household. It is Suicide Prevention Month. And, we always say that one of the things that I always like to tell the people that I train the Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training under the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. And one of the things that I tell people all the time is that people think that if we talk about it, that it will be harmful, because we're going to plant a seed and plant the idea that a person may want to hurt themselves or, take their lives. But I really, truly feel that it's the opposite. The more we talk about it, the more we can find out if the individual needs the help and support, and the better we can be that bridge for them and be able to connect them to resources. So here in Guam, we have the 24-hour crisis hotline. Again, many times when we're feeling very sad and we're in distress, it's not at 10 o'clock a.m. It's usually at 2 o'clock a.m. when everybody is sleeping. This is the 24-hour local number, 647-8833 or 34. We also have the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, 647-5440. That's for all the services, to include children and adults, and also our Drug and Alcohol Treatment Center. ISA Psychological Services is an organization under the University of Guam, and they actually have counselors on site, and they provide counseling services, and that is a free service that is provided to the general public, not just the university students. We also put in the Sanctuary Incorporated, their 24-hour youth hotline number, that is 475-7100. And of course, our counterparts in the CNMI and Saipan, the Community Guidance Center, 670-323-6560. Carrie Dot is another one, and the Victim Hotline, okay? And if you can't get through any of those numbers for whatever reason, you have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. I'm going to turn it over to Darlene Garcia. She's going to talk to you about the Helping Children with Loss program and some of our other programs, and then we will get to the question and answer session, and we'll wrap up the evening.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, let me just get to that slide. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, the ladies did amazing. I learned so much from them today. Even though I teach this stuff all the time, you never stop learning. And so thanks again, ladies, for everything that you shared with us. For me, it's morning. For you, it's evening. So yes, we are excited to announce that we do have a couple of programs that we're offering virtually. And the first one is our grief one-on-one program, which we normally would offer in the physical environment, but because of the fact that we are in this era of COVID-19 and quarantine, there are a few of us that can do the one-on-one programs virtually. And so you can just go onto our Facebook page, Giving Grief a Voice, and book a time to speak with one of us, and then we can talk about if that's something that will work for you. But the other one that I'm even more excited about, and it really falls in line with what the ladies were talking about today, is our Helping Children with Loss program. And this one is also virtual, but just understand that it is not us teaching the kids, it is us teaching the adults how to be able to help our children navigate through this loss. And so I am offering actually 4 workshops coming up, 2 in September, 2 in October, and of course we'll add more into the calendar as we continue to move forward in this place of quarantine. And as soon as we can open up, the ladies will be able to offer this in person. But Raylene and Marcella had really honed in on why it's so important to help your children to acknowledge and to provide that safe space. And sometimes as adults, because of our learning that we had learned over the years, starting as children, we teach these same philosophies and mindsets and beliefs to our kids, and a lot of times it doesn't serve us right. And I think that every single one of the ladies that were on the call today and all of the other grief recovery specialists will understand that it doesn't serve us, because we all have experienced loss after loss after loss in our lives, and the method that we teach really does help us to heal from all of those losses, not just the current ones like Michelle and Raylene had talked about. It's even losses from before, right? It's not losses that are only happening today in our environment. And so, you know, all of us that are grief recovery specialists are not immune to this. We're all still working through many of the losses in our life. And so Michelle used the analogy of the oxygen mask and being able to put that on yourself first before you can help anyone else. And so this is what this program is here for. It's designed to help the adults to understand grief at a level that you've never understood it before. And then to take these tools that we're going to teach you and help your children or the children in your life navigate through those losses. And you're going to learn a lot about yourself as well in the process. So I want to invite you guys to take a look at this program. If you're on the Zoom room, that means that you have my email address. So please email me directly and I'll give you more information about what this program's format is going to look like. And then if you're on Facebook, please message us right there on our Facebook page, and one of us will get back to you. But again, super excited that we're able to offer this online. It's the first time that we've ever been able to offer this virtually. So I would love for people to take advantage of it, whether you're a parent, a teacher, a counselor, an aunt, an uncle, a godparent, a grandparent. I think we all can be in a place where we can better serve our children by teaching them the right things about emotions that maybe we didn't learn when we were kids. I just wanted to address, there was someone on the chat that had asked about certification. So for those of you that are interested to become certified grief recovery specialists like the rest of us, you can go on to the grief recovery website, and they have a ton of trainings that are being offered, and everything is virtual right now, guys, because the whole world is still pretty much on lockdown or on minimum, what do we call it? Social distancing. And so the Grief Recovery Institute has really pivoted all of our programs to be offered online. We do have group programs that we were offering in the physical environment, and I am excited to tell you guys that those are also going to be on the virtual platform in maybe a month or two. And so as those are being released to us to be able to train, we'll be able to communicate that with all of you as well. So thanks, Michelle, for giving me that opportunity to share.
Absolutely. Thank you, Darlene. So please, again, go into our Facebook page, Giving Grief a Voice, if you're interested in any of that. Now we'll go ahead and open the question session. Lupi, are you ready?
I'm ready. Are you ladies ready?
Okay, first question.
Okay. So our first question is, what are some ethical challenges you face teleworking or virtually counseling or helping people who are grieving?
Can you repeat the question once again, Lupi?
Sure. What are some ethical challenges you face teleworking or virtually counseling or helping people who are grieving?
Any of you ladies like to take that?
Well, I can say for me, it is challenging. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat that. The truth is, there are ethical challenges right now, as far as like counseling my own people. I cannot, because I am not certified to do online counseling of helping people who are grieving. However, Darlene is now, Darlene has been fully certified, so she can do it. And Auntie Bobby, who is another grief recovery specialist here on island, she is fully certified. And then I do know that Michelle will be getting certified to do online. And who else said that they were going to do that? But a lot of us are looking toward being certified as online accessible grief recovery specialist. So right now, ethically, I could not do it. Most of us can't, but because people are getting certified in the online, they're becoming what's known as advanced grief recovery specialists. They will be able to use the online platform, and that would be so helpful for everybody. And I'm so grateful that we have some that will be on island, so same time zone. I feel for Darlene. She was carrying a heavy load, being all the way in Canada and being our only certified online here, although there are so many around the world, but here, so I'm grateful for everybody who is taking advantage of those opportunities right now and making that accessible to our community here in Guam.
Yes.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, and so this is all new to many of us, even with telehealth, right? Like I know the behavioral health is doing that as well, and also clinics and hospitals. But we don't provide any counseling services. Again, it's just teaching the grief recovery method. And so part of the ethical aspects of that is really having to go through that specialized training to advance us to that level. So Darlene can speak more to that if she has any input. Dar, do you have any input on the ethical part of online GRM?
Sorry, technical difficulties I was trying to navigate. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me turn on my video. Okay, there we go. I'm sorry, what was the question again? I was looking at the Facebook questions.
Lupi,
what was the question?
So the question was, what are some ethical challenges you face teleworking or virtually counseling or helping people who are grieving?
Honestly, I don't think that we as grief recovery specialists have any ethical challenges because we don't deal in the mental health space. And most mental health professionals they're bound by certain parameters on what they can teach or what kind of methodology they use. Everything that we do with grief recovery is all about the heart. And so we are certified specialists. We're not clinicians that have to abide by ethical rules, if you will. But I will tell you that what we do here is provide an amazing safe space for people to be able to deal with the emotional aspects of whatever grief, loss, change, stress that they're going through in their life. So it's definitely a different type of methodology and format that I've ever seen in my entire life, which is why I gravitated to it and I'm so passionate about grief recovery, because we, again, are all from the heart. And when you're dealing with human emotions and you're able to provide a safe space for people, you never have to worry about ethical things. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
All righty, thank you. The next question is for Marcella. How do you reach out to those outlying students that you mentioned earlier?
Okay, so this is a challenge. This is still something that we haven't completely figured out. We are looking into outside resources, dealing ethically with how we can connect with those students. So what we have done is we've made ourselves definitely virtually accessible, but even phone contacts. So we've actually had um, we give certain hours so that we're in our office space, so that if students can at least get to a phone to give us a call, then we can talk to them on the phone. We have emailed, but you know, we are still limited with the fact that we have our students who do not have computers or phones or technology, internet setup for them to access that. So we have informed the mayor's offices. We've connected with mayor's offices as far as leaving our information with them, leaving the learning packets, of course, with them. And so we give them the information connected to that. We've given them our character ed lessons, you know, that can help them through this time. Social media has been one of our biggest tools, but again, you know, I still have those students, and I'm figuring for now that our phone contact is probably our best bet. But even at that, there are so many times we call and those numbers are not the numbers. Those numbers are not the working, you know, so there is more to be done in that area. I haven't figured it all out. I'm really, if you guys have advice and can give me more insight as to maybe how I can do that with with social distancing, it's such a struggle, you know. So I'm willing to learn from other people I know that are, you know, there are trainings we are doing and there are things we are getting through, but we're not reaching 100% of our students right now. I know that that's the reality, but we're trying our best in every possible way to figure out ways they can connect with us on their term, with what they're capable with connecting with us on.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
And I gotta say, Ella, thank you for that. But you know, in reality, the system itself is still trying to figure that out. DOE and the private, you know, private schools and charter schools are still trying to really figure all of that, to again develop some kind of procedural, you know, a standard procedure moving forward. So everyone everywhere is trying to basically they're doing like testing and trial and error to just refine some of the processes. Thank you so much. Next question, Lupi.
Alrighty, the next question is, and I think Marcela had touched up on this a little bit earlier. How can I assist a youth who has shut down and is finding it and I find that it's difficult for them to open up? So let me repeat that. How can I assist a youth who has shut down and I'm finding that it's difficult for them to open up?
So, so I did touch up on a little bit on that in regards to what I do, as far as creating a safe space and making sure that we are the safe space for them. I think also meeting them where they're at. So, you know, if they're playing video games, ask them if you can play video games with them and start chatting with them. If it's your own child, right, and they're in the home, whatever they're doing, try joining them where they're at and getting them comfortable, because then when they're in their own space and element, it's a lot easier for them to be talking. I find with the boys that I have counseled in the past, walking and talking helps. Doing something physical at the same time really stimulates their conversation. Girls, I've had an easier time. They are more willing. I don't know, for whatever reason, and I not to be you know, I hope I don't offend anybody with those I don't know if they're stereotypes, but my experience anyway, this is what I've seen with majority of the boys and girls that I have worked with. So yeah, girls, you just, open up the conversation. A lot of times they're more willing to speak. Boys, you physically engage with them doing stuff. I remember when I used to have time at Sanctuary playing ping pong with them while we talk, that would help. But those are some of the tips. Another angle that I take is connect with someone they're already close to, already opening up to, a trusted adult that they're already opening up to. And if you have concerns, ask them to slip that in anonymously. Like, not that you're all up trying to be in their business, but if they have a figure of somebody who they're already close to and feel confident speaking to, you can use that person. If it's an auntie, uncle, Nina, older sibling who may be, more mature adult, that you can use that angle to kind of connect with them to open up, because ultimately you want them to be safe. Ultimately, you want them to be heard. And if it's not going to be you, then at least somebody that you both share that connection with. I don't know if those
Wonderful.
will help you.
Thank you, Marcella. I just wanted to add on, one of the things that I have been doing, I also, train the Youth for Youth members who they are youth between the ages of 11 to 18. And one of the things that I have always reminded them again, so I kind of like plant the seed. I let them know that I'm a caring adult. And again, they have permission and a safe space to say what they're feeling and what they want to talk about. And sometimes they're not ready. They're feeling you out too. They want to know if you're trustworthy. A lot of times they would say, I want to tell you something, but I want you to keep it a secret and not tell anyone, right? And I know a lot of us in the services that we provide, we may be mandated reporters. Wherever youth discloses that they want to harm themselves or harm others, then it's automatic. We would have to disclose that, so that, make sure that they're safe and they're not going to engage in that behavior. But if it's just, they want to talk to you about things, I would plant that seed, and that way they know that they can come to me whenever they're ready. And, it may be the next day, it may be days later, and then letting them know again that if it's not me, and this is what I've done with my daughter, I would tell her, there's no one in the world that has more vested interest in your well-being than me. I am your mother, probably her dad if he were still here today. But there are going to be times that you don't feel like you could come to me, like I can't be your support for whatever reason you have. I want you to know that that is okay. I will not be disappointed. I just need you to find your person. And I say that all the time. Find your person. So encouraging them and not making them feel like they're doing something bad because they don't want to talk to you, and they're being disrespectful, but encouraging them to find somebody. I would ask her, so who are 2 people you can name that you can call upon if you can't come to me? And my daughter would say, well, my Nini, which is her Nina, my grandma, my auntie. And so when she identifies those individuals, then I know that I don't have to be doing this alone. I am not alone in this. There's a web of support. So I hope that can offer to the person who asked the question and everybody else. I just want to check in. For the sake of honoring time, we are at 6 minutes past the 90-minute mark, and that's okay with us. I just want to make sure that you guys are okay with that. So if you need to leave the Zoom room for any reason, that's totally fine. We'll just go ahead and finish responding to the questions. I believe we have a couple more questions. And if you want to come back, you need to leave, you can always catch the replay on Facebook, Giving Grief a Voice. For those of you who could stay on with us to the end, we welcome you to stay until we're done with the Zoom, the grief talk. Marcella, can you go ahead and what is the next question?
I can go ahead and share the next question, Michelle.
Thank you.
So
I'm sorry, Lupi.
It's okay. So it's from Facebook. It's from one of our viewers on Facebook. And it's a 2-part question related to depression. So the first part is depression considered some kind of grief? And would you have any programs that will help talk to someone dealing with depression from this pandemic?
I think if I may, I can touch on that. Lupe, thank you. So, where we're not licensed clinicians or therapists, we do not diagnose depression. However, I'd like to kind of refocus it or maybe reshift the question. Is it possible that someone who's been diagnosed with clinical depression may have unresolved grief? Very possible. Very possible. Unresolved grief is exactly that. It's a grief that's unresolved, right? Maybe grief that someone's been carrying with them for a really long time, or maybe even recently that they're not ready to start that healing journey, right? But we do have programs that we offer, and Darlene has some information on that. She touched on it a bit earlier. Grief is grief, loss is loss. So there isn't a specific how do I say it? There isn't a specific program tailored to grief resulting from the pandemic. It's just a grief recovery method all in itself, right? So the tools and methods that you learn in grief recovery can be used for any loss. It can be used for death, loss of pets, divorce, even intangible losses, loss of trust, safety, security. And so I hope that answers the question regarding that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Being diagnosed with depression, that's also a loss of old self. Yeah. So that's something new that a person has to endure. So thank you, Raylene, for that. Lupi?
All right, ladies, that was the last question.
Wonderful. So that wraps up all the question and answers. And I just want to give the opportunity to our presenters this evening. But before I do that, I just want to thank you, Marcella, and thank you, Raylene, for just being here, putting your heart out there and being so vulnerable to, again, just to share our people, our brothers and sisters who are tuning in tonight with us on Facebook, on Zoom, that, you know what? No matter what we are, no matter what hat we wear, and many of us are probably wearing a dozen right now, a dozen hats, that we are all human. And these feelings are so valid. And you guys shared that this evening, and you shared some of the proactive tips. That was one of the questions I saw. Like, how can we be proactive to prevent, certain things from escalating, right? And you all hit it. You talked about safe space, talking, getting the help and support, having me time, doing all the different things that you could do within, again, your capacity. Thank you, ladies, for an amazing show. Do you have any last thoughts that you would like to offer our audience?
I'd just like to thank you all for your time. You've really made a leap of investment in yourselves by attending this. We all are skeptical at some points in our life. What are we gonna hear that we haven't heard before? What are they gonna tell us that we haven't been told before? The thing about the grief recovery is it's driven by your actions. It's an action-based program. It's an action-based method that requires, a work from the person attending. And by coming here and, giving yourself an hour and a half to sit and be part of this grief talk is definitely taking ownership and allowing yourself to be in that space. So great start. This is what brought me to grief recovery. This is what brought me to become certified. And so I applaud you for that. Thank you for your time and welcome you to join us next week again, Wednesday, 7 p.m.
I'd also like to say thank you for your time and your effort to be here. It really means a lot. It says a lot for yourself. If there was one thing I would ask that you do is give yourselves grace. This is not a perfect system. Our world is definitely not a perfect world. There are going to be so many times we are going to mess up, fall short, not make it in the way that we think we need to make it, or handle things the way we think it should be handled. And during a time where everything is so uncertain, when you do something and you find that you need that help, or you need to reach out, do reach out, and don't weigh yourselves heavy with guilt. Find grace in understanding that you're human. You feel things, you learn things. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's easy, but ultimately take those correct action steps through learning more about grief recovery and doing more to improve where you're at in all aspects of your life. So thank you for being here again. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Lupe. Thank you, Auntie Bobby and Dar and everybody on here. I really appreciate your presence.
Thank you so much, Marcella and Raylene. I just want to share a real quick story before we sign off. Just last night, one of my good friends, just because she tuned in last week's grief talk, said, "Sister, could you please be my heart with ears for a moment?" And I just almost cried because I was like, of course I could be your heart with ears. And people are listening, guys. People want the heart with ears. And that's all you are. You could be for them in this time. And then when you need a heart with ears, you need to find that person as well. I want to thank all of you ladies, our behind the scenes people, Lupe and Auntie Bobby and Darlene, and most importantly, all of our participants on Zoom and all of our viewers on Facebook. Before we end, I'd like you to take your right hand, please, and place it upon your left shoulder. All of you can do this, even those of you on Facebook, and take your left hand and place it on your right shoulder. And I want you guys to bring it in, and I want you to give yourself an amazing hug, because sometimes we have to love ourselves first before we can love other people. You have an amazing evening, the Grief Recovery team. We love you, and we will see you next week at 7 p.m. Same time, same place. Be looking out for the flyers, and please go ahead and share that. We love you all. Be safe. Take care.
Adios.
Adios.
Bye.
Bye.